So we have another question. I love this. What advice do you have for a teen visually strong who has auditory processing challenges and may miss parts of conversation? This is the one that I said, oh, I think that's me. Because I can hear a lot of things, but there are some things, let's face it, my receptive language is not as strong as my expressive language. I need to learn to listen better. But for a teen, strong visual auditory processing.
Yeah, this is really rough because there's the auditory processing, and what I realized, there is a component, and I haven't seen any studies, but I know from the years when I used to do assessments, there is just a memory processing delay. So I've had kids, the first kid it happened was we were practicing, like we saw one of his classmates in Starbucks, and he said hi to her, he knew who she was, and he was like 6.
Right.
And we walked out the door and we're like, who was there? And he couldn't tell us. And the therapists were like on him going, we're not going to tell you. Because it became like a game.
Right,
no, we're not telling, we know you know who was there. And he just couldn't. And like 20 minutes later at home, they were like, so who was there? And he answered, like with no issue. And we were like, what is this? So I actually brought him in, and it was when I was doing a lot of neuropsych testing. So it's like, I have to figure this out.
Right.
And there is like this one nonverbal test where there's immediate memory and delayed memory. And we realized that when he saw information, it took him 17 minutes to process. So it was one of these where you show him something, you take it away, and you say what was there, and he couldn't answer.
Right.
But if we waited 17 minutes, he could answer you.
That's fascinating.
It was so fascinating, and this is a nonverbal test, so it was all just through pictures. And he was actually a visual learner.
Right.
So we actually worked on decreasing, like trying to practice getting it slower and slower, like so that he could recall it faster. So it wasn't just all auditory processing, there was also like this memory component. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So in classrooms, we tell usually if you have the auditory processing delay, but you're a visual learner, that means you can read. And so usually we just tell the teachers, you have to put everything in writing.
Okay.
So they can read the instructions and follow along. In conversations, it's teaching them to socially, it's almost like little warnings to whoever the other speaker is. Just being like, it takes me a moment to think, like just being able to meet someone new and saying, it takes me a moment to think and to hear what you said, so, like, don't mind me, or I might ask you to say something again. Like, it's teaching those little qualities. It's what they call repairing language, so that you can stay in a conversation when you miss components. And you said that maybe that's you. But you have, I see you, you're great with talking to people, and when you don't hear, you're saying, say that again. Like, I'm sorry, I missed it. And it's teaching the teen how to do that appropriately. And then everybody's usually really good with you. Like if you kind of warn people, like, hey, I have a little bit of problems like listening for long periods of time. I need, and you're just kind of warning them. And so that, I might ask you to repeat, it's not you, it really is like how I'm thinking, or this is what I'm working on. People are very nice to you. Like people will wait for you.
Well, I do see that for me, sometimes somebody will say something and I'm processing something else, and I'll take the information in, but it doesn't get to the part of my brain, and then it's like I have to switch over and access. It's tape delay. I always say, sorry, I'm on tape delay. Give me a second to process because I got this other thing going on. And I find that because it isn't my strongest suit, for instance, when I go to IEP meetings, I will ask for all the reports in advance, because if they're just going to read something to me, I can't process it all. I needed the visual. And I'll say to them, give me reports ahead of time. And if somebody messes up, I say to them, sorry, you have to give me the piece of paper and I need to be reading along with you, because I'm not going to get it orally with the AU, not OR, right? I'm not going to be able to process it in that way. And I've stopped apologizing. For years I've apologized for that, and now I just don't apologize. I go, no, that's how I'm going to have it.
Yeah, and so in situations, that's a compensation that you do. It's like if you want me to be responding immediately, you give me the information ahead of time so that I can respond. But conversations are different, Conversations you have, I always say as the kids get older after high school, our adults that have a delay are usually better suited because adults are patient. When you're little and the little kids try to do this, other little kids aren't patient, so then they just walk away.
And that's hard.
And that is really, really
it's a
hard.
missed opportunity.
Yeah, and that's just because for a typically developing child, when they're young, they have no patience to sit there and do this, or to wait, or, they have their own skills that they're working on in terms of learning how to stay in a conversation or relationship. Right. So that's really rough for our little kids. But usually, like when we can get them to high school, there are other peers who will be patient enough, being like, okay, I'll wait, or like, hey, or let me repeat this for you, and it's not a big deal.
I've been racking my brain while we've been talking. I just watched an interview with a young actor the other day, and I can't think who it was, but they were describing working with a director, and they said, I don't know what it is with me as an actor, but the director will tell me something, and I will tell them, I'm not going to be able to process. I hear what you're saying, but I'm not going to be able to give it to you until tomorrow. But I'm going to come tomorrow, and I'll have had time to process it, and I'll be able to do it tomorrow. And that they could, and the director was fine with that. They had to adjust their style a little bit, but it was the actor who was telling somebody, this is what I'm going to need to be able to deliver. I'm going to be able to do it for you, but I need this much time. And he said, I don't understand people who can just, do it right there. I need process time. But so part of this then is teaching those processing, the self-advocacy skills to this teen. But is there also a way at that point that we can extend the muscle a little bit, get it a little bit better? Can we work on the memory a little bit, or is it not worth the time to do that?
Well, the thing is, they probably should be working on it on a separate place.
Yes, not in real time.
Not in real time. In many ways, they are working on it in real time if they're in just the typical relationship or conversation. But they can be separately, like learning how to, auditory processing is really difficult to measure. And so it's very conflicted. Like if you start reading, information on it, people say, yes, you can teach it, no, you can't. There's a lot of philosophies around it.
Yeah.
But people do get better if they're like visual learners, being able to, if I'm going to go hear a lecture, it's better if I had the paper ahead of time, or I've done some reading on it ahead of time. If you're, in a situation for work, getting it's the preparation that you more need before you get there. It's the priming of the information for you to be able to have a conversation and be able to follow along, and contextual cues and all of those things.
Yeah.
But you can practice, and I've seen our auditory processing kids just improve as we work on it with them in therapy. But it is something that's tough, and there are some people that they just have this delay. Okay. And then you have to learn to compensate at some point.
I will say that we've had people a couple of times on the show talking about AIT or Baralt, or Tomatis is another one, which are all therapies designed to help with auditory processing. And it fascinates me, and they always tell me I'd be a good candidate. It's expensive, and a lot of times your insurance won't cover it. Almost all the time insurance won't cover it, but
Have you heard it recently? Because everybody was doing these when probably my first 10 years. But then some people actually had some reactions to it that were not good.
Really? I have not heard that.
But then in the recent last 5 years, I've started seeing it not in those versions, but a different way now through occupational therapists.
Interesting.
But yeah, we had some kids who have not done well with it.
Really?
Yeah. We've had kids who have done well. We've had the majority, I have to say there's no change.
Interesting.
But we've had both.
Okay.
Like both ends too. So
Very
you just don't know who it's going to help and who's not.
And it's expensive.
And
so
it's
hard
expensive.
to, we're talking about like $5,000 to go through the process.